Hi everyone, it's Darlene. Welcome back for card number 2 in my series Homemade Techniques, where I'm using items found around the house to make cards. Today's card uses rice. I used rice and watercolor to create this really kind of confetti looking card. I used white jasmine rice, but I'm sure any kind of rice will work for this technique. I'm going to use some Canson XL Mixed Media 98-pound watercolor paper. And for my card, I used the Gansai Tambi watercolors. I used Peerless watercolors on a different card, which I'll show you at the end of the video. I'm using green, blue, and purple for my card. So what I'm going to do is start by spraying my watercolor paper with water. You want a lot of water for this technique. So I'm going to use quite a bit here when I first prime it up. And then I'm going to take my colors, and I always like to start with the lightest color first. I'm using a big fat brush because it holds a lot of water. And I like to poke my paper down with a paper piercer. You could actually tape it down to your work surface if you want to. I'm just too lazy to do that. So anyway, I'm going to take my green and I'm going to really get a lot of paint on my brush. I'm going to dab it on my paper. And so what you want to do here is you want to get dark color, so you can use a lot of paint, but then you also want a lot of water so that there's plenty of water for the rice to absorb and create a nice pretty effect. I decided to do kind of a diagonal here with my colors. You could do different colors splotched all over the place, or you could do striped colors, or however you want to do it. But I did mine a little bit diagonally. And now I'm going to grab my blue and get plenty of water, plenty of paint, and I'm going to make sure that I overlap them, because you get a really cool effect with the rice when you overlap the colors, because it sort of combines it in the outline around the rice and keeps the background a different color. It's kind of hard to explain, but you'll see it when I'm finished. And I'm sure you're thinking that this is looking kind of messy because I have too much color and it's starting to run together and it's kind of getting a little mottled, but it will turn out really pretty. So I'm going to take my purple next, and I'm using my colors in the order of the rainbow. That's always a good idea to do. And I'm going to tap in my purple for the rest of the cardstock. And you can see I've got some really dark splotches of color here, but you'd be amazed how much of this gets absorbed by the rice. All right, now I've got my color all down and it's time to put the rice. And you want to work a little quickly here because you don't want it to dry. And I'm just going to cover this whole entire thing with rice. And I'm going to make sure that I don't get too much overlap, and you can see I got a little messy with it, and I went back and removed a couple of those grains. But you want to make sure that every spot is covered. At least that's the look that I was looking for. I just wanted to make sure that I had those impressions all over the whole cardstock to make it consistent. So you can see I'm dropping it into all the different holes. And already the color is like almost all disappeared because the rice has just sucked it up. So I'm going to go ahead and let this dry for several hours, because I think it takes a little longer to dry because you've got paper underneath rice, so you have something covering it. But before I let it dry, I'm going to take one more spritz with water just to reactivate that watercolor again and really get the absorption going with the rice. So after that second spray, I let it dry for several hours, and I don't know what happened with the lighting here. Maybe I forgot to turn on one of my lights, but anyway, so it's time to take the rice off, and so I'm going to remove this, and you can see how pretty it looks and what a really different sort of effect you can get with this. So I'm going to hold it up so you could see it. So you could see where the green and the blue overlap. You kind of have a blue outline around the rice with the green in the background. All right, so I'm going to clean that up and work on the rest of the card. I have this Technique Tuesday die. It just says birthday, and it sits on top of a solid piece of cardstock. So I have some Nina Solar White, and I'm going to cut it out of that. I'm also using this Summer Greetings die by Simon Says Stamp, the happy one, and I cut that out of both white and black cardstock. So I'm going to take the black background and I'm going to grab my surgical tape, because I'm going to inlay the word happy using the letters that I cut with the white Nina cardstock. So I'm going to turn this over. I'll put my surgical tape right there on the back with the sticky side facing down, so that when I flip it over, the sticky side will be facing up. And I'm just going to trim it here so I don't have any hanging off the edge. And now I'm ready to inlay my die. I'm going to be using a pick-me-up stick. This is a great tool for picking up little pieces, especially when you have this intricate type of inlay. So I'm going to pick up the different pieces and lay them inside. And there's also an acrylic piece that comes out the other side of this pick-me-up stick that you can use to kind of help you lay it down. But I'm just using my fingers and I'm pressing down. So once I get all the white letters in, now I'm going to go back to the black one that I cut out and get the insides of the A and the P's. So I'm just sort of figuring out where these go. So I'll fill in the blacks here of these 3 letters, and then I'm ready to go. And I thought, you know what? I've got all the other pieces, so I might as well put them together. So I went ahead and created the same exact thing, except in opposite, with all the other pieces that were left over, and I'll just use this on another card. You can see them finished right here. All right, so I'm going to take some string. This is just embroidery thread in black, and I'm going to cut a piece because I wanted to balance out the happy with a little bit of black on my white area. So I'm going to wrap this around the back and trim off the excess here. And then I felt like I needed something just a little bit heavier. So I'm going to take about 7 or 8 inches. I'm going to double it up, cut it, and then I'll cut it on the other side so that I have 2 separate pieces of string. And then I'm going to make a double bow with this. So I'm just going to tie it just like I would a normal bow. Usually this takes me 2 tries, but this time I only had to do it once. And so I'm going to pull my tails downward, and then my loops, I'm going to make sure that they're both the same size at first. And then what I'm going to do once I get it figured out is I'm going to just grab one of the tails on each side and pull it. So I'm going to grab one here, and one is going to be a little bit easier to pull than the other, so you just have to play with it a little bit. So I'm going to pull one on each side, and that'll make it look like I can actually see all 4 loops. So I have 2 small ones and 2 big ones, just for something a little different. I decided to pop up this birthday piece, so I'm going to take some Scotch foam tape and put a couple of layers here, peel off the backing, and then just kind of figure out which part of my card I like the best and cover up the other part. So I'm going to put this at the bottom of my base, and then my base is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, so it fits a full-size card. And then for my happy, I'm going to just put some tape runner on it and lay it flat. And I decided to lay it underneath the B just a little bit so you could see that they're 2 distinct words, but they kind of come together by touching. And then finally, I'm going to take a glue dot to adhere my bow. I'm using a micro glue dot. It's about 1/8 of an inch wide, and I just take it between my fingers and I roll it into a ball, and then I put it where I want my bow to go. And that way I know exactly where it's going, and I put it right there on top, and you press it down and it's not going anywhere. So once I get that placed, I'm going to take the tails and cut them. I cut mine to be the same on both sides, so they're all the same length. And then finally, I'm going to take this panel and put some ATG tape runner. I'm going to make sure I get right up to the edge because the watercolor panel does warp a little bit, and that way you get it adhered as best you can to the card base. And because this watercolor paper is pretty thin, it's pretty easily straightened out by adhering to the base. And that is the card. Now I also created one with Peerless watercolors, and I'll show you what that looks like. I've got some close-up photos, but it's a much softer look. You don't get those harsh lines around the rice like you do with the Gansai Tambi. So it's just something a little different. And I took a sentiment and cut it up into pieces and put it down on the center of the card. And that is the card for today. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.